Hello again, guys. Today we're going to take a look at solving addition equations. We just talked about equations. Basically, if it has an equal sign, which means there's a balance, which is why I've drawn you a little balance scale down here. So we're going to look at just addition equations today, which means we'd be adding on one side. So the term you need to know is the subtraction property of equality, which basically states you can subtract a number from one side as long as you subtract the same number from the other side. You'll still get a true statement, or you'll keep it balanced, however you want to look at it. So I drew you a little scale. Here I've shown you 4 plus 3 on this side. My balance, my equal sign is 7. If you add 4 and 3, you do get 7, so you see that that's balanced. Now, if I were to take 3 away from both of these sides, I could take away this plus 3, and I can take away 3 over here, which would also leave me with 4. My balance would still balance. That's basically what this property is telling me. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to give you the 2 most important rules for solving equations. You're going to see this repeatedly. You're going to need to know this. That's your hint to write it down. The rules of solving equations. There are 2 big things you need to know. Keep it balanced. That's what I was talking about in that first board. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. You can do anything you want. Might not help you solve the equation, but you can do anything you want to one side as long as you do the exact same thing to the other side. The other thing you want to do is you're trying to isolate the variable. This is how we're going to solve it. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by either taking away or adding to get the variable by itself. That's the trick. We want the variable by itself on one side, and then we'll know exactly what it's equal to. So let's just try a few of these here. And you'll notice these are all addition equations. We're adding something. So the first thing I want to ask, and I want you to think about, is what is the opposite of addition, or how would you undo addition? In your head, you should already be thinking subtraction. Maybe you yelled at the screen. That's okay. I talk to my computer all the time. So how are we going to undo addition? We're going to undo it by subtracting. My subtraction property of equality tells me that I can do that. I can subtract from this side, but at the same time, I also need to subtract from the other side as well. So if we look at this one, I'm adding 9 to b. So how am I going to get b by itself? Well, I want to take that 9 away. And I can do that. That's what the property tells me, as long as I also take 9 away from this side. I've taken that 9 away, which means those numbers basically go away. There, we were adding 9. I took that 9 away, so I'm just left with the b on this side. Over here, I have 20. If I take 9 away from that, I'm left with 11. So b is equal to 11. Now, the joy of equations is you don't have to wonder if you're right. You can go back and make sure you're right. If b is equal to 11, that means if I plug this number into my original equation and solve it, it should give me a true statement. So let's take that and plug it back in here. 11 plus 9 should equal 20 is what I'm saying. If I add 11 and 9, I do indeed get 20, and I find out that my equation checks out. So let's take a look over here at this one. Here I have h plus negative 2. So remember, we can subtract to solve an addition equation. However, what is it that I want to take away? I want to take away the negative 2. I'm subtracting negative 2, which, if you'll recall from our earlier videos, whenever we subtract, it's the same as adding the additive inverse. So we're subtracting negative 2, or we can always write it as adding 2, because those are actually the same thing. So what happens here, I've isolated the variable. H is all by itself. Over here, I have 38 minus negative 2, which is the same as plus 2, which gives me 40. How can I know that I'm right? I can go back and plug it in and solve. If I have 40, I add a negative 2 to it, I should get 38. Well, remember, our signs are opposite, so that means we're actually going to subtract the 2 numbers. 40 minus 2 is 38. 40 is the larger absolute value, so a positive 38. It is correct. That one checks out. All right, what you'll notice over here is that I have 2 different numbers. So what I need to do in this one to make it easier is we want to combine our like terms, which in this case is our constants. So we want to combine it so that I just have a variable added to one number. So I have a negative 7 plus 26. So what is that going to give me? Well, remember, my signs are opposite, so that means I'm subtracting. 26 minus 7 gives me 19. 26 is the larger absolute value, and it was positive, so I wind up with 44 is equal to q plus 19. Now I have a simple equation that we can solve. How am I going to undo my addition? I'm going to do it by subtracting. Oops, that's a 19, not a 9. I can subtract from this side as long as I also subtract the same number from the other side as well. So on this side, I'm left with Q. I've isolated my variable. I've kept it balanced. I followed my 2 rules. 44 minus 19 gives me 25. So Q is equal to 25. Now we can again go back and check if we're right by simply plugging this in and adding 25 plus 19. Does that give me 44? Yes, it does. Here again, you'll notice I've got a lot going on this side. Well, what I want to do, combine my like terms to simplify it before I try to solve it. So I've got negative 12 minus 6. Remember, whenever we're subtracting, we add the additive inverse. So I've got a negative 12 plus a negative 6, which gives me a negative 18. Negative 18 plus 4 gives me a negative 14. So I now have C plus negative 14 is equal to 16. So again, how am I going to undo my addition? I'm going to do it by subtracting. However, remember, I'm subtracting or I'm taking away negative 14. And again, how do we do that? Well, we do that by adding the additive inverse. On this side, I've now isolated my variable. I've kept it balanced because I've done the same thing to both sides. 16 plus 14 gives me 30. And again, you can always plug it back in to check it and make sure that you're right. If you have any questions or problems, feel free to go back and watch the video. You can post them in the comments, or you can always talk to me in class tomorrow. Have a good night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.